unmute that, unmute that, transition. Good evening. Welcome back to Hockey Talk tonight, presented by the Winnipeg Aurora players with salary retained by other teams, Kappa Kaimanen, Noel Blanchett, and Miguel Hefeweizen. Whoa.
What a mouthful.
It is a mouthful and a half. You'll notice that in addition to the naming rights, I also sold the shirt off my back. It is right here. Congrats, shirt. I'm finally wearing it.
It's not off your. It's not off.
It's
your
not
back
off my
yet.
back yet.
It's still here.
You guys told me I wasn't allowed to take my shirt off on stream anymore.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's like TOS or something like that.
Is it?
Maybe, I don't know. There's some wild things on Twitch, so it's probably actually.
Yeah,
fine.
it's probably fine. I don't think anybody really had any complaints.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're selling the shirt finally. The shirt that is, the Cup champions. Please let me put Cup championship merch on the merch store.
I thought they were doing that, but like maybe it's
They did it for Atlanta, and then it didn't happen for Seattle's first Cup. And I was like, hey, about this. And then somebody in HO chat jokingly said, I mean, if you're willing. And I was like, I mean, I'll do it, I guess. So
they were just looking for a design or whatever.
I think it was just a matter of like actually like putting stuff on the merch store on like regular intervals. I want to do it. I want to wear a back-to-back Seattle Cup shirt.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. Seattle won another cup. Seaman 2
They sure did.
was just as exciting as Seaman 1. I'm glad we got to relive
went to 7,
that.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Glad we got to relive that exciting cup matchup name.
Everyone was clamoring for Seaman 2, Electric Boogaloo.
Delivered. It was pretty good. Congrats, Seattle. Obama awarding Obama.jpg. We did great. It was a good time. I definitely contributed and didn't ride coattails. Both of those
You were
seasons.
definitely there. Let's see. I have the index open.
I was basically
Jimmy Wagner.
I was
mean,
like just under point per game.
at 19 and 21. That's like doing stuff.
Yeah, I was like, I expected to fully ride coattails, and then my player was like scoring more than half the forwards on the team.
Yeah.
And that's when it got weird. I was like, oh, I expected to contribute nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Also during the regular season, I think I was fourth in forwards. No, I fell down to fifth.
Yeah, you were down to
past
fifth.
me. Which is like
Eight.
fine. Fifth out of 9 forwards.
Yeah, you almost had half as many points as Max Manning, which is frankly absurd.
I had half as many goals as Max Manning,
True.
which is also absurd.
Can we talk about how Max Manning went a goal per game in the regular season for a second?
It's fine. It's fine.
It's fine. They ticked the goals per game slider down a notch,
And then everybody scored goals.
and then everybody's like down.
Yeah.
Okay, we're going the other way instead.
Yeah.
I hope you're okay with that.
So fun fact, there's a couple things that play into this. Forwards didn't have to change a thing. Correct.
Yes. And nothing changed build-wise for forwards.
Goalies, for the amount that they matter, which we'll get to that article as well sometime soon, goalies probably function differently in FHM 8 versus FHM 6. I don't think in 6 you got stats based on where the shots were located, did you?
No, you didn't.
Yeah. So, new engine, new stats. I'm going to assume that goalies work slightly differently.
That's a pretty fair assumption.
Goalies might not be operating at their highest capacity. Defense and offense also changed to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
And tactics changed. Teams were very unoptimized tactically, and the biggest thing that you see from that is a possession gap and a defense gap. So,
Yeah.
honestly, I think that the goals per game would have gone down, except it's also new engines scoring up.
Yeah. Makes sense.
And I think like the goals per game might have been a little high, but there is like actual variance in, like if you look in the file, you can see like the goals scored per game in the league,
Yeah.
and like it oscillates a little bit. And this might have been a high season, but I think that like some of the scoring is just massively spiked because of the engine change and not because there's something broken. We can talk a lot of ways about how FHM is broken, and we'll get to that later too.
EHM when I've been training
Honestly,
my entire life for this.
It's all what the wannabe Finn era is shaping up for.
Mm-hmm.
Like we should have seen this coming.
Yeah, it was the writing was on the wall, people.
Um, so yeah, Seattle won the cup. It was a great time.
Congrats.
Buffalo is back? Question mark. Is Buffalo back?
Yeah, Buffalo's back. That's It's like probably a fair statement.
Is it a fair assessment of the situation?
I think. Well, at least I can tell you one thing: the top line for Buffalo is definitely back.
Yeah, I mean, like you guys, like weren't blowing the doors off, like offensively or defensively, but like comfortably came third in the East.
Mm-hmm.
Same number of points as Chicago, only behind Toronto and Atlanta. Chicago being in the West, yes, but
Right.
like
We have to compare. Look, anytime we talk about Buffalo, we have to talk about the old Great Lakes division.
yeah, I mean, honestly, Toronto, Buffalo, Chicago finished 4, 5, and 6.
Mm-hmm.
So like that makes me happy.
Toronto just took the place of old Hamilton.
Yeah. Hamilton, excellent at tanking. Good job, guys.
Yep.
Let's see. Playoffs. Seattle beat Man beat Buff. Buffalo beat Toronto.
Yeah, we did beat Toronto along the way, which is pretty cool.
Buffalo achieving or Toronto underachieving?
Yes.
Fair. I think,
I think a lot of people.
given the roster,
And
Toronto
like-
probably underachieved.
Yeah, I mean, I do think Toronto definitely underachieved a little bit. They had one of the, I think maybe the top TPE roster. If not,
I think
top,
Winnipeg did.
yeah, probably Winnipeg, but like top 2 or 3.
Yeah, I think Winnipeg, Toronto, Seattle.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Um,
So they definitely underachieved
yeah.
to some extent. I think Buffalo also just like kind of got hot at the playoffs right
Yeah.
when they needed to.
Yeah. Every team in the first round, every team that got knocked out in the first round got swept or only won one game.
Mhm.
LAP got swept. They were kind of on the tank. Every other team won one game except for Edmonton and Montreal.
Yeah.
Edmonton played against Calgary. Calgary also was not that hot this season, I believe.
Yeah, it didn't look like it.
Yeah, Calgary was pretty mid. Edmonton was worse, but like in that mid tier.
Yeah, they're starting to get on the come up now.
Buffalo, second in the division, got Montreal. Montreal, much more of an interesting case, I think, right? Like, that is a team that actually has like substance to it, and like it very much felt like we had. You could argue that we had like 9 teams that like felt like they could be competitive in the second round.
Oh yeah.
And Montreal felt like the one team that was kind of getting the rough draw.
Yes. I would say so.
Like LAP, Edmonton, Texas, NOLA. NOLA, I feel like might have underperformed. New England, Philly, Baltimore. They're all like, okay, this isn't our year. That's fine.
Mhm.
Montreal, it feels like they are very much ready to scrap. And like
Yeah, I mean,
last season, they went to the conference finals.
I'm kind of just flipping through Montreal's roster right here, and it's a very good roster.
Mm-hmm.
No huge glaring weaknesses anywhere that I can see.
Yeah. And I think the depth of the conferences has definitely shifted back to the East. I think a couple seasons ago you saw the West being incredibly deep. You had the Pacific Arms Race with 4 good teams. You had the Central having 2 good teams. And
It's tipping back into the East being the dominant conference again, I
yeah,
think.
well, I don't know about dominant. Top end still feels like a toss up. Like
Yeah, that's fair.
Winnipeg, Seattle this season versus like Atlanta, Buffalo, Toronto.
Toronto.
Like
Yeah.
that feels like a toss up. But the East goes so much deeper,
Hmm.
which I don't know if that like actually means anything come playoff time, but it is something curious to point out. Like if you're building a team in the East right now, you have a much tougher road, I feel.
Yeah, it's a much tougher path to that Challenge Cup final there.
Mm.
Or like you're probably gonna play another like really good team coming out of the West, but you're gonna play 2, maybe 3 really good teams in the East along the way.
Yeah. And that I feel like kind of is what it felt like in the West a couple seasons ago. Like Chicago was loaded, LAP was loaded, Seattle
Mhm.
was getting there, Calgary was there, San Fran was getting there. Like the divisional final felt like a battle, and then you had the conference final just to get to the cup.
Yep.
One really interesting team also, Manhattan, which we were talking about right before we went live,
Yes.
has grossly outperformed their regular season performance twice in a row now. Impressively, like not grossly as in like a factor of magnitude, not like calling it disgusting.
Yeah, they were ninth in the league by points, kind of hanging around that middle of the pack area,
Yeah, and just took
and
off.
just absolutely took off in the playoffs.
Like annihilated Philly, beat Atlanta in 7, beat Buffalo in 5.
Beat Buffalo pretty comfortably might not be the right word because they were all pretty close games, but
Yeah, like
they still did
took
beat us
it in
4-1.
5, which
Yeah.
is like not handily, but like quickly.
Hmm.
Very impressive. Roster still getting way better. Like have multiple IAs filling up the back end. Like that roster can
A
get
lot of there's
way
room for improvement,
deeper.
which is scary.
The roster can get so much deeper, and it's already that imposing. Is there a team that you're? Is there a team that you would bet on other than Manhattan for next season's cup?
From either conference.
Yeah,
Let's see. I mean,
Winnipeg will
gotta
still
think
be up there. Seattle is slowing down, but still up there.
Yeah, I gotta feel like Toronto and Winnipeg figure it out eventually. So they both have like insanely talented rosters, but just fallen a little short in the playoffs recently.
Yeah,
I also do think Buffalo is still in a very good spot, even though they did make the conference finals this year.
Mhm.
We're gonna be in a pretty good spot coming forward.
yeah,
Get me as another good defenseman next season.
yeah. Is at that point then you think Atlanta's window kind of over? Like they'd already been alluding to it, I think, but is it like over now?
I don't think their window's like slammed shut yet, but they probably still have a couple. I would say they still have a couple of very good runs left in them.
Yeah, it gets way
Like
harder from here though.
It does get way harder from here. Like they still have probably the best defensive group in the entire league, I would
Yeah.
think. With 4 guys hanging around that 1800-ish range,
Mhm.
and a very good forward core, and one of the highest TPE goalies in the league.
Yeah,
And I think, yeah, and Petrov was one of the better regular season goalies this season. I
yes,
think
but
had the highest
has now retired.
Yeah, but they still have next season, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, so they will still be very good again next season, I think.
Yeah.
But after that, it starts to get a little rough, I think, because that's when regression really starts kicking you in the teeth there.
Yeah.
And it's It's one of the older rosters in the league.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of thinking.
Right. So I still think they at least have one more solid season, and then to go for it, and then after that it gets a little dicey.
Um, I had something that I was going to transition into, and then I immediately forgot it. Um, yeah, no, I've got absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
Bounce over to the J playoffs, which have just concluded. We should be getting that off-season post soon.
We should.
It probably won't happen while we're live. Are you pinging Finn about it?
Maybe perhaps.
I heard the clacking. I was like, "This is happening, isn't it?" In the J playoffs, as I switch over to that, we had Detroit winning it in 7 over Maine. Doing that after beating Carolina in 7. Maine took St. Louis in 5. None of the other series before that were especially contentious. St. Louis upset Nevada, which I think took a lot of people by surprise. But Nevada's offense just didn't really get
they
going.
weren't too far off in the regular season standings. I think TPE wise, their rosters were
Yeah,
not too far off, and also like it's the J.
yeah.
I honestly think once you get past the first round, most matchups are like straight coin flips.
That's fair.
Because like once you weed out like the teams that barely scraped in, like Quebec City did this season.
Yeah.
Once you get past those teams, it gets like the TPE difference is not crazy.
I do think that like Anchorage Maine felt like a coin flip going into it.
Yes, Anchorage was a surprisingly good team to me this season.
Yeah. UConn Detroit didn't feel like it was going to be much, and Regina Carolina felt comfortable, I'll say.
Mm-hmm.
Like, was still sweating every single game, but it turned out being comfortable.
I mean, once you get that, that's kind of just how it goes in the playoffs, though. When you're the GM, you get your roster together, and you're like, all right, feeling good about the playoffs, and then
it's just a roller coaster.
It's just
you buckled in, and you're just along for it.
Roller coaster.
Anything that you took away from the J playoffs from your experience?
Reaffirmed that my team was very bad this season.
Fair.
Because after Quebec City got knocked out, I kind of just like, all right, well, this doesn't happen. Well, usually this doesn't happen after making several very deep playoff runs over the last few seasons.
Yeah.
Like, I'm trying to think of the last time. You have to go back to season 63 to find me getting knocked out of the playoffs, or at least I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna take some time off.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of chill for a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't think I have much. Maine has impressed the last 2 seasons in the same way that Manhattan has.
Very good, and I think they keep a lot. It was barring like early.
Maine keeps
obviously.
a lot, Detroit keeps a lot, and Carolina keeps a lot.
Yeah,
which is absolutely terrifying for everybody else.
Yeah, that's 3 of the top 4 right there.
Yeah,
I don't know how St. Louis is looking. I think they probably still got another season. 66 is your aging out, so they're losing 2 players. Looks like their goalie and one of their wingers. And they also have a few inactives they could replace. So, I think a lot of that top 4 is still going to be very good next season.
Yeah. I think the only other thing is something that's been like hush hush whispered. I know it's come up in GM chat, so that's not gonna be a surprise there. But Vax had mentioned that it came up in the YouTube chat ahead or in the game 7 between Detroit and Carolina, which I hadn't actually confirmed, but I assume that he had seen something, and so it came up in Detroit. But Detroit actually had a player at 500 and something TPE for the first half of the playoffs, um, which is something that turned into a really interesting discussion. Um, I think that, like, first off, congrats to Detroit. Like, they didn't have that player in the second half of the playoffs and beat Maine in the finals.
Hmm.
Um, it got really weird because essentially FHM, despite having um, progression turned off, generated a random event that like boosted this player, and it was after playoff updates were in and after everything was audited. So nobody was looking at builds, had no reason to look at them. Didn't get looked at, didn't get caught until after Game 4 against Carolina, um, which put things in a really awkward spot. So Trap Zelenak had +1 to all his defensive stats and +1 to the big game hidden attribute.
And
Um,
boy, did they have some big performances.
there were a number of big performances, including an OT winner in one of the games against Carolina. Was leading Detroit in points at one point through that first stretch. I think finished second on the team in points. Um, and like not something that like they had any control over either, which sucks because I think a lot of people are going to look at that and say, "Oh, like Detroit doesn't deserve that cup," and like they did. Like
Hmm.
it was fixed for the last 3 games against Carolina. We won 2. They won Game 7. Um, and they won, 4 games against Maine. Like you can't hold that against them. They won the games that they were presented with. Um, we in Carolina had gone to HO saying, "Hey, we want the series redone. Like this is absurd. Like we're down 3-1 out of massive performances out of this guy." Um, and it went all the way up the chain. Um, JHO, SHLHO, Simmers, owners, all were in a conversation about this, figuring out what happened, how it happened, um, which I think I actually ended up finding out what happened, and giving them that information.
Hmm.
But since it had happened before the UConn series, they didn't want to resim the entire playoffs, which is fair because that was an immense amount of work. You'd have to resim all the Detroit UConn games while also quick simming all the 3 other series to the similar results, which like 20 games that would take like days upon days to get right.
Hmm.
We didn't have that time. We wanted the Detroit Carolina series resimmed, and we're also told no. Um, Partially because it wouldn't be fair to UConn, partially because the impact was not widespread. Because the last time we had the playoff resim was back in season 60. A bunch of updates got missed. The file was messed up. We restarted the playoffs because a ton of teams were affected.
Hmm.
And that is the side that doesn't sit well with me and won't ever sit well with me because given that the player on Detroit was affected by this, um, it hurts Carolina having to play against that. It hurts UConn who had to play against it. It hurt Detroit and Trap who now have their achievement tarnished with an asterisk or a question mark, and it hurts whichever team comes out of the St. Louis main series because they're not sure they're getting a just opponent. And like, if Detroit makes it through, should they've been playing against Carolina? If Carolina makes it through, did something else happen in the series? Like, we can't be sure of what the result actually should have been. Um, so at the point that it came up, there were 4 teams left in the playoffs, and the choice to not resim affected 3 of the 4 teams remaining in the playoffs. and in my mind, that is a large component of the league that's still playing, and the effect of that is widespread. Um, I am just kind of let down by that decision. Because I think that all three and UConn, but three of those teams in the remaining of the playoffs were hurt by the decision to not play out the competition as it should have been.
Mm-hmm.
And like I'm glad that like Detroit got there. Maybe, I guess, I don't know. It's they're gonna get shit on for it, and that's not fair. Um, like I don't think that the site administration like properly protected them from what happens if they win, and I don't think that they protected Maine and Carolina from the what ifs of the situation regarding the outcome of the Carolina Detroit series.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I'm glad that it probably won't happen again because we figure out what happened and how to prevent this stuff. But like I don't think Carolina is ever gonna really look at this postseason and say that we're comfortable with the outcome.
Yeah, that's pretty fair. Like, it sucks.
Yeah, and like I really hate it for Detroit because like they have no control over anything in the situation. Like
Yeah. And they're just gonna get endless shit for it. Maybe not endless shit. They are gonna
they've
get some
gotten
shit
some
for it.
at least,
Yeah.
which like I get, but like it's not even they're getting stuff just from Carolina people, and I've tried to put that down immediately.
Mm-hmm.
Like they couldn't have control any of it. But like if people are saying like snide things about it, like they don't have like any agency in this situation.
Right.
Like they built a roster, they went into it, and they won the games that they were presented with, and you can't fault them for winning their games.
Yeah.
And like you can't fault players for performing in games when they did their updates right, they got updated right, and FHM broke.
Mm-hmm.
So like Detroit shouldn't like get any of the flack for it. I can understand.
It's nothing that they did. It's just
Yeah.
like FHM be that way sometimes.
Yeah. But like I don't know. It shouldn't. I don't think it should have unfolded this way, and like it's rough because like I think that everybody like I get along with pretty much everybody that made this decision, and I think very highly of them.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that they, in a tricky situation, tried to make a call from their perspective that made sense. I just think that they made the wrong choice from serving and protecting the teams and players that they run the league for.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's it. I'm not happy, but not like mad at this point. It's just I want a chance to compete, and it's not going to happen. Before that, you saw the article I wrote about the J regular season? That was fun.
Yes.
Fun fact: the rightful rookie of the year in the J played 15 games this season. That was a hot take.
was a mildly hot take, I think.
I think it can be presented in a fair way. It is a hot take.
Mm-hmm.
Especially because like the rookie points race was like up there near like the top 10 of the right, like, you know, non-rookie players.
Yeah.
But then like also Alderberg was a top 3 goalie for the time that he was around. And
Yes.
that gets like really weird to like compare at all.
Yeah, it gets really weird when you're talking about someone with such a small sample size too.
Yeah.
Like I get like 15, it was what, 15 games, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not
I think. Maybe I'm wrong.
yes, 15 games.
Okay. Yeah. 15 games, 3 shutouts against 2 different teams, um, a top save percentage. He played a game against Detroit. He played a game against Nevada.
Hmm.
Like he didn't just play soft competition. Um, the team around him is good, but like the team around all the Detroit players were good.
Yes.
Um, I think that I don't know. It's a fair argument. Like for the games that he was able to play, he did great. And it's hard to it is legitimatately hard to critique somebody for a games played thing
Right.
when like they didn't have like they don't have any control over that. Like they found the league and created
Yep.
and played the games after they created. Like if you had
Because they were one of the like last waiver pickups, if I'm remembering correctly.
yeah, one of them. Like
One of the last like two or three.
if you have a guy that misses the first third of a season but
Hmm.
puts up like 60 points to somebody else's 70, like you're not just going to look at the raw numbers. You like have to take into account like okay, yeah, like they didn't play all the games that they might have been able to if they found the site a week earlier. And
Hmm.
like that's where like there's like a huge distinction of being in a sim league. Like that those things work really differently in a sim league compared to real life.
Yeah.
Um, but also 3 shutouts in 15 games.
That's really good.
Um, Second part of that article: Detroit dummy good. Um,
Shocking.
Carolina second half really good.
Hmm.
Colorado first half very good. Or Colorado second half way worse maybe. Um,
It wasn't great. That's for sure.
yeah. Different team trajectories were pretty fun to do.
Hmm.
Um, Way to stabilize QCC.
We did a thing vaguely, sort of.
Um, I mean, like, did stabilize a little bit. Like, you're in a weird spot this season.
Yeah, this was a season I did not mind losing games. That's for sure.
Yeah. Um, you were the best contributor on ice for Quebec City.
I was, which is nice to see after my player's best season was still his rookie season.
Yeah.
Wild how that works sometimes, but
I mean, like, especially in FHM, it feels like players are
yeah.
a
Although also this that was the last season we played on FHM 6, so maybe that has something to do with it.
yeah, maybe.
Defenseman scoring in 8 just seems to be kind of down across the board. Like usually you'd have like
Yeah.
in FHM 6 seasons you'd almost always have like
Although that was like a complaint about 6 as well. Is that like there was like 1 or 2 that were good, right? But
yeah, there was usually like one or two defensemen who had a very good season
yeah,
and would find themselves somewhere in like the top page of scoring on the index.
yeah. I mean,
But then after that kind of fell off really quickly. And
yeah,
now it's just like, oh, well, no, none of these defensemen are scoring anymore, really.
yeah. Like defensive scoring is down, but
Who
like it
was the?
was down before, and like I think it's very at this point it's much more of a we need to consider forwards and defensemen like separately as far as like TPE goes.
Hmm.
I
Yeah,
think
like
we're pretty
the top
comfortably at that
scoring
point.
defenseman this season was Torton Erickson in Carolina with 55 points in the J.
Yeah, which
Whereas there were 200-point players, 200-point forwards.
um, Torsten would be a little bit higher. We'll remember that Carolina was dog shit for the first half of the season because I'm bad at FHM sometimes.
We're all bad at FHM sometimes. It's not just you.
That's fair. Like I think
Like
Torsten could have probably got
Flourish on Detroit only put up 53.
yeah. I think Torsten could have gotten point per game in a full season playing how we were.
Hmm.
I think he had like 30 something in the later half and like 20 something in the first half.
Yeah.
Um, it's really just shooting percentages are super low,
Yeah.
which like fair, but I do think that like something and we there have been like a couple discussions about it over the last month or two, but
Yeah.
I do think that like something needs to get addressed at this point.
Yeah, even with the bump in shooting accuracy cap for defensemen, I still only put up like 8%.
Yeah, and like I get and we've had that conversation about like maybe that bump could have been higher. Um,
Hmm.
Fair to do it the way they did. But like we've got to make like some actual like drastic changes at this point. I think.
Yeah, I think they were taking it easy this season because I know in six when you played like just a regular file,
Yeah,
if you had a defenseman with like 13 or 14 shooting accuracy, they would just absolutely run the table and lead the league in points every year without even breaking a sweat.
yeah,
But so I think I feel like that was probably known, and they took it easy to see if it was the same way in eight, but it doesn't seem to be the same way.
yeah, yeah. No, the engine actually seems like properly handling a lot more of these situations.
Right.
Um, given, I guess, do you agree with the final part about my article? Do you agree with the take that Piastri is the MVP?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Like I really don't think that it's personally close either. Like I personally
Yeah.
don't think it's close either. But there is, yeah, yeah. It's just Piastri.
Yeah. I think it'll end up being Florsch, Erickson, Piastri as the nominees,
Hmm.
um, which I think is fair. Like those three are the ones that are contributing the most point share in general,
Yeah.
and all three of them doing it for top teams.
Yes.
Um, I don't think I have anything else regarding the J stats in that regard. I guess
Caleb for goalie of the year. Don't at me.
Caleb is probably goalie of the year.
Yeah.
I think it's fair that Alexis Texas gets some votes, but Caleb was just better.
Yep. Caleb put up 7 shutouts on a absolutely dog shit QCC team.
Yeah,
What the hell?
yeah,
We
um,
probably missed the playoffs without Caleb absolutely standing on his head for like the 40 some games we had him on the team.
yeah. I think like Alexis and Caleb are fairly close this season, except for the fact that like Caleb just dummied teams on like a weekly basis,
Yeah.
and then like the contrast to that is like other times he got obliterated, but also I think QCC was notably worse than Regina.
Yes, I would say so. Like, do you know what his record was on your team for the regular season?
I do actually because I listed that in the first section. He went 6-2-0 in
Okay.
Carolina.
And he was the starter throughout the playoffs, correct?
Yes,
Yeah. Yeah, so did very well on a good team.
yeah. Now he turned up, got another shutout in Carolina.
Mhm.
Like performed well. Like honestly, performed better than Adelberg. In that stint, but
Yep.
only barely. I think he had, I think actually like it was a very small sample size, but he had something dumb like a 9.5 or 9.6 or something save percentage. It was kind of
Yeah,
absurd.
that sounds about right.
Um,
Sure wish there was a way that I could tell that without opening up FHM, but I don't want to do that right now.
Caleb had written it down somewhere, but I don't know where it is.
Ah.
Um, Other awards that you think are relevant that you want to give out?
Ooh. I got nothing that immediately pops out at me.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, it's nothing that immediately pops out. I had no draft picks, so I had no rookies, so I didn't care about the rookie of the year race.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, rookies.
Um, who is your? We'll say humbly, Vax and Pickle and Frenchie and I get GM of the years. Who's the third team that you'd give GM of the year to?
I
And then I'll give you mine.
mine would my third vote probably goes to maybe Maine, maybe Nevada are the two that immediately pop out at me.
Okay.
I have to look back at the last couple of seasons. Yeah, probably Maine, probably Nevada. Nevada with the slight edge.
I give Nevada the slight edge because both were supposedly in like worse roster years.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like had like solid roster compositions, but were turning over more people than normal. I think
Yes.
Nevada did slightly better in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
My other one is Kelowna because
Okay.
Kelowna literally doubled their team's points or scored twice as many points in the second half as they did the first half. They had 17 points at the halfway point and scored 40 over the next half.
That is really good.
The 40 that or the 37 that they scored um, was the same number of points that St. Louis scored in the second half of the season.
That's a pretty wild stat.
It is. Um, I don't know. I like that level of turnaround is impressive to me. It
Mm-hmm.
didn't pay off in the end. Like they couldn't catch Newfoundland. Um,
Yeah, because they were still.
but they like if you they were easily in last place at the midway point.
Yeah.
The gap between you and them at the midway point was the gap between you and the mid table teams.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and like to turn that into something for next season, that's impressive.
Yeah.
Um, let's see.
Yeah,
Anything
it's a good call.
anything SHL awards.
SHL awards. Do you think there's any chance that Grayson Cooper wins playoff MVP despite missing the finals?
Okay, I like this conversation. Um,
Because it's something I think about in the NHL from time to time. Because like I was thinking about it with like Connor McDavid last year, even
yeah,
though they got swept in even though they got swept in the Western Finals, he still put up like 2 points per game throughout the entire playoffs.
yeah. Um,
Cooper put up 38 in 17 games, which is just ridiculous.
yeah. Um,
Now, granted, that entire top line of Buffalo was just scorching hot through the entire playoffs.
yeah. The other two lines of Buffalo were just like,
They were kind of they were
yeah.
kind of dragging us along there.
Um, let's see how many. Okay, 15 of those were even strength goals. Um,
Yeah, it's not even like we were adding. Like, it's not even like Cooper was just like putting in like 10 on the power play or something like that.
Yeah. I would
It was a
say
lot of even strength goals.
if there was a season, it might be this one.
Mm-hmm.
Willie Miller did have a 9.24 in the playoffs.
And yeah, that is really good.
And 4 shutouts.
1.8, 1.78 goals. Yeah, that's really good.
Like, yes, if there was a season that a skater won it from a non-finals team, it might be this one.
I think Cooper definitely gets a nom
I agree. I
for
don't
sure.
know if it's
Because Manhattan looks like a lot of scoring by committee there, like their entire team. Like
yeah.
it looks like pretty much like their top two lines were all pulling weight.
Yeah. I think it'll end up being
Seattle.
Manning Cooper and Willie Miller, which like sucks for Manhattan, but I don't know if you can really say anybody in Manhattan gets that award.
Yeah.
And I think that's a fair way to look at it. Like Manning carried Seattle's scoring. Willie had 4 shutouts and the nutty save percentage, and Grayson Cooper did just put up like more than 2 points per game
Yeah,
against Montreal, Toronto, Manhattan.
yeah, like
Like
not a
that's not even like a slacking team to rack up
yeah,
points
there
against.
was there was no like it's not like, oh, we played against the 16th place team that just barely scraped their way into the playoffs and
No,
it's
you
like
you had like 3 good teams to play
three
against.
three very solid team, three very good teams along the way.
Yeah,
And Cooper was just torching them all. Like every day I would look on the Buffalo Discord. I'm like, all right, well there's an 8 point game for Cooper. That was ridiculous.
yeah. Um, if it was a weaker performance out of Seb, probably at this
Mm-hmm.
point, I'd if you gave me good odds, I'd bet on it. But I
Yeah.
wouldn't say they're the favorite. It's
Mm-hmm.
it's close.
Yeah, I think if there was a year for a non-finals player to win it, it would be this one.
Yeah. Um, anything regular season?
Anything regular season. Uh, it is actually insane how many 100-point players we had this season.
Yes, but we all like we have to preface that with there were 7 teams trying to tank this season,
Yeah, there were a lot of teams who were just like all in
like explicitly tanking, and
on the
like that's
tank.
not even putting Edmonton in there
Yeah,
and New England in there.
yeah, there were 4 teams with uh, oh my god,
Yeah,
let's see here. There were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 teams with sub 20 wins.
yeah, like
And then Edmonton had 30.
and like those teams are like
Edmonton and New
spread
England.
across the divisions.
Yeah, there's like a couple here, a couple there.
LA and San Fran, Texas and Minnie,
Tampa and Hamilton.
Tampa and Hamilton, and then Baltimore.
Yep.
Like
Yeah, there were
every team got divisional opponents trying to tank.
right. There are some all-timer tank jobs this season.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, when everyone's tanking, sometimes you accidentally win games against other tanking teams.
Yeah,
Because it turns out someone has to win every game.
unfortunately.
Unfortunately for those tanking.
Yeah. So like, yes, there were a ton of like point scorers on the good
Hmm.
teams, but also those goals have to come somewhere because we set a goals per game slider.
Yep.
Those goals have to come from somewhere, and they weren't going to come from Minnesota, Texas, Hamilton, Baltimore, San Fran putting up less than 3 per game.
It's true. They
Um,
do have to come from somewhere. There were also just a lot of, like, frankly absurd shooting percentages this season.
yes, but again, like there were 7 teams that allowed
Hmm.
more than 280 goals.
Yes.
That's like 4.5 a game.
Yeah.
Like you, teams were just aggressively not trying to play defense because that's how you win a tank off. You get the like in this league, you get the other team to score, so you can't win.
Yep.
So like yeah, that was going to boost the scoring numbers for the other 13 teams. Like
Hmm.
even Edmonton, like not a impressive team, still had a point per game score.
Yep. I mean, even like some of the tanking teams even had point per game
Yeah,
players.
Nola had Valor at 75.
Tampa had Kozlov at 78.
Yeah, LAP had two people in, like yeah, Sarah Burke had 80 on LAP. Like there were just so many games against tanking teams out there this season that like people were going to score goals.
Yep.
Like
Oh,
it
sorry.
couldn't be helped.
Yeah.
Um, who's your MVP?
Who is my MVP?
It, which is honestly like a little hard.
Yeah, that's a tough one this season, I think.
Like Manning had the Manning and Leisure were the only teammates that got 100 points.
Yeah.
Can you be the MVP with 110 points on a team that didn't really win?
Hmm.
Lev did pretty good.
Yes.
Selic had two 90-point scores on the team.
Yep.
Um,
Um,
Not like on the line, but on the team.
right.
Toronto had three guys above 95.
Yeah, the big outlier is Jaeger. Go put up 110. Second place on New England was, although was he a trade deadline thing? Or is he always on New England this season?
No, Taylor was there the whole time.
Okay. He put up 110, and second place on New England was Paul Quavu at 81. So that's a pretty big gap.
It's a gap, but like those goals didn't turn like those points didn't turn into anything.
Yeah, they were kind of just like empty calorie goals, I guess.
Yeah, like he scored a lot. He scored a lot of even strength.
Hmm.
But like Rich is saying New is a bad team without him. New wasn't really a good team anyway.
They were, while they probably would be a bad team with him, they also just like were a pretty middling team with him. So
Yeah, like if you take him out of New England, like New England probably just finishes 13th instead of 12th because they were just at the bottom of teams that weren't explicitly tanking.
hmm like
Um,
there's no world where they were like performing worse than Hamilton if you take away
yeah,
Jaeger. So like they were always gonna make, or like Tampa or Baltimore. So like
yeah,
they were always gonna make the playoffs.
yeah, um,
One player does not a 23-point difference make.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, like, but like, yeah, they're a bad team without him. But like, he didn't like elevate that team to new heights, and that's like something that I struggle with.
Hmm.
Like we were talking about, I've talked about a couple times with Piastri in Nevada. Piastri drove that team to a top three finish,
Yeah.
which is like notably different, I think, in my mind.
Yeah.
Um,
Do you have any time for Evgeny Petrov in the MVP discussion?
I think that's fair.
Nine
Um,
919 save percentage in
yeah,
48 games played.
highest of the starters, four shutouts.
Highest, like by a pretty substantial margin among starters, because like
Yeah,
919 to 910 is a pretty huge
yeah,
difference in starting
that's
place.
huge. Like Atlanta didn't have the scoring presence that we've
Yeah, their highest
normally
scorer
seen.
was Q at 84.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that's fair.
So they weren't an offensive juggernaut, but Petrov looks like stood on their head for most of the season
Yeah,
to keep Atlanta at the top of
yeah.
the East.
And like you see the goals against for Seattle and Winnipeg being pretty close to Atlanta, but
Hmm.
Seattle and Winnipeg are doing that with like deeper talented rosters, and like the save percentage is what drove Atlanta's goals against so low.
Yes.
Um, I think Toronto probably wins that division. Wait, No, Toronto and Atlanta are in the same
They're not in the
division.
same division.
Um, like I don't think Atlanta is the top team in the East without Petrov's performance.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can argue about how much impact like TPE has, or how much like a goalie's like build and salary cap hit matters, but
Mm-hmm.
like the performance that Petrov put out is like notable in that regard.
Yeah, I will say that Petrov was playing behind like probably the best defensive group in the league, which probably kind of taints that performance a little bit. But I mean, they still put up absolutely insane numbers.
Yeah, I mean you still got to make the saves.
Yeah, you still do have to make the saves.
Oh, let's see, how many shots against did they have? 29.76. How many shots against did Seattle have? 22 shots against for Seattle. 25 shots against for Winnipeg. Like, so he actually just faced more shots too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it wasn't even that like maybe they were lower quality shots, but like
We have no way.
we
Of
can't
knowing
differentiate
so.
that. Like,
Yeah,
faced a lot of shots, made a lot of saves.
did the goalie thing.
Did the goalie thing made a difference? I think.
Yep, I would say that's
I,
pretty fair
I
to
can get
say.
I can get behind that. Good catch.
Yep.
Um,
I feel like goalies don't ever really get MVP votes in this league, but like just
yeah,
like with Cooper in playoff MVP, if there was ever a year for it, I think it could be this one.
yeah,
I think a lot of people are gonna have a hard time looking past Max Manning putting up 66 goals.
yeah. I mean,
Or
that's a flashy number.
Yeah, or Jaeger putting up 61 on a middling team, but
Yeah. So
there is more to it than
yeah,
goal number go Burr.
yeah. So the interesting thing is like I would give Jaeger a like top forward award, and I would give Jaeger a outstanding performance award. I wouldn't give him an MVP award because that's like a weird like that's something that I've had hangups on for like 3 years on this league now.
Yeah,
Is that there is a clear distinction between MVP and value that you provide to
I remember us talking about. I
performance.
remember us having this argument in like episode 2
Yeah,
of this show.
that's something that I've talked about for literally like 3 years at this point.
Yeah,
There is a distinction between most valuable and best performance.
mm-hmm.
Lev,
Well, I've had a great season too.
yeah, I think Lev, Snooks, um, Lev, Snooks, Petrov, and like Tig or Teddy on defense. Like the only guys that got close to point per game, putting like huge contributions into their teams. Like Teddy kind of falls into the like, how much are you improving the team when the team's not that impressive?
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's still some value there.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's not really a lot of other people who just immediately
Yeah.
jump out at me for
Um,
any SHL MVP.
Shout out to Roddy B and Gibbles for winning fights, I guess.
You got him. Good job, guys.
Um,
Boy, there were not a lot of fights.
they were not. No.
Unless these were just a lot of fights that were just, unless like there were secretly a lot of fights, they were all just ties.
Yeah.
Which like the PIM leader was Adam Barron and Zach Wilson with 62, so I do not feel like that is the case.
Yeah. Oh my god, I just looked at goalie GSAA leaders. Petrov's destroying everybody.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Which, like, fair, but, like, actually destroying people.
Mm-hmm. GSAA is not something that is on the index. That's right.
Oh, yeah, the index got updated. That was cool. Thanks, Silver.
The index did get updated.
Silver's pretty cool.
Yeah.
The team stats in the team page is phenomenal.
Yes, I love that.
Big fan of that. Um, Anything else accolade wise you want to dole out?
Mm, no, not really.
Okay.
Nothing that I can think of.
Okay. Fair. Um, I guess we kind of covered um, who is the best goalie in the SHL and why is it Willie Miller? Willie Miller was the best goalie in the playoffs. Willie Miller was not the best goalie in the regular season.
Yes.
Seb sucks.
Very, very loaded question, Seb.
Yeah. And because Seattle loves to talk about themselves, as if you didn't get enough of that from me already, Tig is asking, would you say the trades, would I say the trade to Seattle has been a success so far?
Well, you've won 2 cups, so
Good job, Tig.
good job, Tig.
You LA Rams it, and then we won cups.
So are the Argos not picking in the first round till like season 74 or something like that?
Probably not, but like we can flex the back-to-back cups that long at least.
It is worth the cup.
Also, like Tig got to do that and go out on top, and also won the President's Trophy. So like
Very cool.
yes, Tig wants to talk
got
about
to do-
himself, but like
He's got to do it all.
Tig was probably just GM of the year the last 3 seasons.
That's probably fair.
Like last 2 seasons. Yeah, made the trade, won the cup.
Last 2 seasons for sure.
Yeah. I think they won it last season. Didn't they?
I don't know. You were on the team. You tell me.
I don't care about Tig's awards. Let's see. We don't need that getting to his head. SHL awards, nom 67. GM of the year was Asen Rashard. Tig did not get a nom.
Ah. Okay.
That's
Well, you also have to remember that does not take playoffs into account.
I mean, sure,
I guess. Like, right?
but like
I guess Seattle was in the Cup final the year before that, but
I mean, okay, so
Went
they
out
were
in
in the
the
cup
first-
final the year before that, and they were 5th in the regular season last season.
mm-hmm.
So like maybe not this season, absolutely.
Yeah, this season they should absolutely get some recognition.
Yeah. More GM of the year awards to non-top 4 teams
Yeah, that'd be pretty neat.
in both leagues. Like, yeah, I don't know. Should GM of the year be GM of the year and Coach of the year take into account playoff success or not?
Man, I feel like they should. Personally,
Which is hard because like
it is hard. Like maybe you think
I feel
about
like
it.
as soon as you do
Maybe
that,
you think about it in
the
the
team that
shorter
wins
term.
the cup automatically gets a nom every year, and that sucks.
Yeah. I mean, if you won the cup, though, you obviously did something right.
I mean, like yes, but like
I think especially in the J where there's no coach, where the coach award is also kind of wrapped into that one.
that's kind of an issue.
Yeah.
Um,
Look, I don't like it either, but that's just the way it is.
yeah, that's a separate conversation.
Yeah.
Um, I need to start looking at this season's index again. Hang on. I mean, yeah, I guess GM of the year probably looking at Seattle, Winnipeg, Buffalo,
I see that.
or Atlanta.
Or Atlanta.
Maybe Seattle, Atlanta, Buffalo. Did Winnipeg do anything this offseason? I guess Seattle didn't
Yes.
either.
I feel like Winnipeg made some pretty
I can't
splashy
remember.
trade this offseason. Yeah, it was for Hefeweizen,
Oh yeah.
who was a pretty solid player for
Yeah, that's
Winnipeg
fair.
this season.
Okay, so Seattle, Winnipeg, Buffalo, probably.
Mm-hmm. Buffalo did a lot with a
I guess.
Buffalo maybe for coach,
Yeah, that's
maybe not
that's that's
GM.
fair. I was just thinking that. Seattle, Winnipeg, Toronto for GM,
Mm-hmm.
and then like Atlanta, Buffalo, someone for coach.
Mm-hmm. There's probably someone in there.
Give it to Hamilton for figuring out the best way to tank.
The most bizarre coach of the year award.
I'm realizing now that the losing team won the playoff MVP last season. That was Lev won it. So maybe Cooper doesn't get it just because of that, but that'd be kind of dumb.
Let me go look at Lev's playoff performance from last season.
It was good.
It's really, I remember it being really good. 43 and 27.
Pretty good.
Pretty solid.
Carrying a team that people didn't expect to perform in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Deep.
Well, that was also like that line. I assume that was the line for Manhattan was top four, three of the top four in playoff scoring.
Yeah.
So it's like a similar situation to
Cooper.
Just while also getting to play more games.
Yeah. But also, like, making it to the finals might mean something.
Yeah, making it to the finals does tend to help you out a little bit in that department.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty safe to say.
Yeah. Draft pick trades. What do you think of LAP moving up to 3 overall? Last thing.
They moved up to 3 overall. That's probably fine. What was the? I haven't been following.
It was for a sec. It was their pick
moving up for a second.
It was a late. Hamilton also made a trade after that, so like I wasn't really piecing together what overall the picks were.
Mm-hmm.
LAP got 3. Gave up 5. Oh, they jumped San Francisco for a second, and then Hamilton took that, gave it to Winnipeg, and moved all the way down to 16.
Yeah, and got a future first, future second out of it.
Classic Hamilton move.
Classic Hamilton move.
Seems fine.
Seems fine. There was one today too, I think. So you got trade today.
Yeah. Also, like, Fuzz getting ahead of Toast is like classic Pacific Arms race.
Yeah, it never ends, does it?
Nah. Winnipeg Edmonton, which was
Winnipeg moving out of this
moving into this class.
Moving into this draft after moving out of it yesterday.
Sure, dude.
Yeah, that's fine. Or acquiring an extra pick, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
They still have the LAP pick, whatever that one is. 5, I think you said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, no. Yeah. They have that now.
And they have whatever this other pick is that they got from Edmonton, who had it was their own pick.
Yeah.
So like what is that? Like, because it's playoff exit in the first round, so like 14, something like that.
Yeah.
Late first. Probably fine.
Yeah.
The Toronto pick will probably be another fairly high one next season, so not a huge deal.
Yeah. Anything else you want to cover tonight? Or do you think we're good?
I think we're probably good here.
Yeah. Not a whole lot of much else to do. Good to catch up on everything. Draft coming up, which we will recap, I guess, because that's this weekend.
The SHL draft is this weekend.
So we'll recap that next week.
Sometime after that.
So we'll have Meet the GMs at some point, which I guess we'll see. We'll see who we have on. Maybe Smith and Dwight, maybe somebody else.
I'm sure we'll have one of those idiots on next time.
Maybe. Smith isn't asleep, but he's close. Dwight's actually just asleep.
Yeah, he is actually
He
just
was
asleep.
awake from midnight till noon and said he might go to sleep early tonight. So he's gone.
Early
He's
being
he's
like
gone.
early being like 2 or 3 in the afternoon
Yeah, that sounds about
instead of
right.
4 or 5 in the afternoon.
Yeah,
Most bizarre sleep schedule I've ever seen
yeah.
for
Um,
someone to. Uh, Dwight is just one of the most bizarre people I've ever met in my life.
yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, I guess that's it. No closers because nobody asked us any. And I don't really have any like food takes right now.
Food takes, food takes, food takes. I discovered Stroop waffles recently.
Good for you.
Never had one
Good
before.
for you.
They're excellent.
Yes. Um,
Why were the Dutch hiding this from me for my entire life?
I don't know if they've been hiding them from you
Yeah,
because
probably
I've
have
known
not.
about them for like a decade.
Yeah.
Double rice and double beans on your online Chipotle order is the easiest way to get extra calories.
Yes. Absolutely.
Phenomenal value
It's
there.
free. It's literally free.
Yeah. Um, that's about all I got. See you guys next week.
See
It's kind of lonely without them.
yeah, a little bit. Yeah, fuck them though. Who cares?